Have you ever wondered why every ancient tribe, every lost civilization, and every culture on Earth created a without ever meeting each other? Why did humans look at the same stars and invent different heavens? The answer isn't in the sky, it's in the human mind. Imagine the world thousands of years ago, no science, no medicine, no explanations for earthquakes, storms, death, or the strange feeling of being alive. The world was a mystery filled with danger and silence. In that darkness, the human brain did what it always does. It searched for patterns. It tried to make meaning. Psychologists call it pattern seeking. When we don't understand something, the brain creates a story. It connects dots, even when no dots exist. A flash of lightning becomes a message from the sky. A good harvest becomes a reward from an invisible force. A child's death becomes a punishment from a higher power. The mind isn't trying to lie, it's trying to survive. Religion didn't begin as a scam, it began as a coping system, a shield against fear. Humans were the only species aware of their own death. That awareness is terrifying, so the brain created a story powerful enough to calm the fear. Death isn't the end. That idea alone changed everything. It gave purpose where there was chaos. It gave comfort where there was anxiety. Humans didn't discover religion. The brain produced it. Some scientists call religion a meaning-making engine. When reality feels random, the brain hates it. Randomness means no control, no predictability, no safety. But a story, even a supernatural one, makes the world feel organized. It gives rules. It gives answers. It gives someone to thank and someone to blame. And here's the beautiful and dangerous truth. Certainty feels better than truth. The earliest humans told stories around fires. Those stories became myths. Myths became rituals. Rituals became belief systems, and those belief systems became religions. Not because someone designed a scam, but because the brain is addicted to meaning. Think of it like emotional technology. Fire helped humans survive the cold. Religion helped humans survive the unknown. It united tribes, reduced internal conflict, and created shared values. If everyone believes the same story, no one feels alone. But this is where things begin to change. Once a story becomes shared, it becomes powerful. And when a story becomes powerful, it becomes sacred. The moment a belief becomes sacred, it becomes unquestionable. That's when the psychology of survival becomes the psychology of truth. Every religion believes it's the right one because every brain believes its story is reality. Not because people are foolish, but because certainty is comforting. Certainty is survival. In the end, religion wasn't born to deceive the world. It was born to protect the human mind from a truth it couldn't handle, that we are small, fragile, and temporary. And so we created stories that made us big, important, and eternal. What if the most powerful beliefs in history were born not from truth, but from the way the brain edits reality? What if the stories we call sacred are simply the brain telling stories to itself? The human brain is a storyteller long before it is a truth seeker. We love facts only when they match the story we already believe. This is where the psychology of religion becomes fascinating, because belief doesn't start in temples. It starts in the neural wiring of the mind. Every brain lives with a hidden guide, cognitive bias. A bias is the mind's way of simplifying the world. It bends reality so we can survive faster than we can understand. We're not designed to see the full picture. We're designed to see a useful one. Take confirmation bias. Once a group believed agrees controlled the rain, every storm confirmed it, and every drought served as a lesson. The brain collects evidence that supports the story and ignores what doesn't. It feels logical, even when it isn't. Then there's authority bias. A leader, a healer, a shaman, anyone who claims to speak to the invisible world gains a special power. If someone is accepted as an authority, their words feel like truth. People follow not because of evidence, but because of emotional trust. Add magical thinking. Humans naturally link unrelated events. I prayed for safety, and I survived. Therefore, prayer protects me. The brain creates patterns from coincidence. In a world without science, this wasn't ignorance. It was innovation. When stories are repeated over generations, they become collective memory. And here's the secret. Memory is not a recording. It's a reconstruction. The brain edits, exaggerates, and changes details every time a story is told. A dream becomes a vision becomes a miracle becomes a holy foundation. This is the narrative fallacy. The brain believes if a story feels complete, it must be true. Humans would rather believe a beautiful lie than a meaningless truth. That's the emotional engine behind religion. As myths evolved, something strange happened. The brain began to reward belief. When we feel certainty, the brain releases dopamine, the same chemical involved in pleasure and motivation. Faith feels good, certainty feels safe, doubt feels painful. So the mind protects belief the same way it protects the body. And that leads to the greatest illusion. Belief feels like knowledge. If enough people believe the same story, it becomes reality inside the group. Questioning it becomes dangerous, not just socially, but psychologically, because challenging a belief threatens identity. So sacred myths aren't just stories from the past. They're stories the brain refuses to rewrite. Religion grew not because humans were naive, but because the brain is built to fill the unknown with meaning. And once meaning is sacred, it becomes untouchable. A story can unite 10 people, but a system can control 10,000. How did simple myths around a fire grow into temples, gods with names, rules, punishments, and leaders who spoke on behalf of the divine? To understand the rise of organized religion, we have to follow a simple truth. Belief scales, but only when someone manages it. Early tribes weren't building churches. They were building safety. Stories created unity. Unity created survival. The tribe that believed together fought together. As human groups grew larger, something changed. Belief couldn't stay private or unstructured. It needed rules. It needed hierarchy. It needed people who could protect and interpret the story. This is where the first spiritual authorities emerged, not because they planned a deception, but because the tribe needed someone to make decisions. What does the God want? What is allowed? What is forbidden? What happens when we die? The person who claimed answers became powerful and trusted. That trust slowly transformed into religious leadership. Over time, belief stopped being just a story. It became an institution. Rituals were formalized. Sacred objects were created. Knowledge was written into symbols and texts. Rules became commandments. Story became law. Religion now had structure. It provided something that pure myth never could: predictability. If the gods demand sacrifice, then sacrifice protects the tribe. If prayer is done correctly, harvest will come. If we follow the holy rules, disaster will spare us. The uncertainty of life suddenly felt manageable because religion gave humans a way to negotiate with fate. But something deeper happened. Belief fused with identity. Being part of a religion wasn't just about worship. It became a sign of belonging. We believe this. They do not. And where identity forms, boundaries form. A tribe without borders becomes a tribe without safety. This is where the engine of power entered the sacred space. Once a belief system had rules, it also had consequences. Leaders enforced rituals, punished those who disobeyed, and protected those who were loyal. Religion became a social technology, a way to keep order without constant violence. Instead of fear of the chief, people feared divine judgment. That fear was invisible, and therefore everywhere. This shift changed humanity forever. Religion shaped how people ate, married, raised children, and even how they dreamed. It controlled time through holy days. It controlled land through temples. It controlled morality through sacred texts. But here's the paradox. The same system that brought order also created conflict. When one belief became a system, every other system became a threat. Because if our God is truth, then their God must be false. This psychological shift laid the foundation for something powerful and dangerous: the belief that only one story can be right. If billions of people believe in different religions, different prophets, and different ultimate truths, how can each person feel completely certain that their belief is the right one? The answer isn't in scripture. It's in the human brain. The moment a belief becomes sacred, It stops being just an idea, it becomes identity. And when a belief is part of identity, the brain protects it the same way it protects the body. Psychological research calls this identity fusion, where the self and the belief merge. So when someone questions the belief, it doesn't feel like a debate, it feels like an attack. This is why religious discussions often turn emotional, not logical. The brain doesn't ask, is this true? It asks, is this safe for who I am? The truth becomes personal. And when truth is personal, logic becomes emotional. Underneath this instinct are several ancient mechanisms. First, in-group bias. Humans evolved in small tribes where survival depended on loyalty. Trust your group, fear the outsiders. Those who followed the same beliefs were safe. Those who didn't were unpredictable. Thousands of years later, the same instinct still lives in our psychology. My belief is the truth is another way of saying, and my group protects me. Then there's worldview defense theory. When people are confronted with different beliefs, especially about life and death, the brain feels threatened. The idea that another belief could be true implies that your belief could be wrong, and that uncertainty brings back existential fear. To avoid that fear, the brain rejects anything that threatens the worldview. Ironically, the more someone tries to disprove a belief, the stronger it can become. This is called backfire bias. Evidence against a belief makes the believer defend it even harder, because the belief isn't built from facts. It's built from identity, culture, family, emotion, and meaning. Every religion contains something unique, but the psychological architecture behind them is incredibly similar. A chosen people, a sacred text, a moral code, a reward after death, a story of origin, a story of destiny, a figure of authority, prophet, priest, monk, shaman, a universal truth. These elements create a complete worldview where everything makes sense and randomness disappears. And when the world feels organized, the brain relaxes. Certainty is a form of emotional safety. This is why two people with completely different beliefs can both feel absolutely correct. They're not comparing evidence, they're defending identity. Religion gives people something science can't give: a place in the universe, a purpose, a destiny, a moral role to play. And that belief is powerful. It can inspire compassion and peace. It can also create division and conflict. Because if your belief gives you meaning, it becomes impossible to imagine meaning without it. So any challenge becomes a threat to existence itself. What would you give to never disappear? What would you trade to know that death is not the end? For most of human history, the answer has been simple: everything. Human beings are the only species that fully understands it will die. This knowledge is both a blessing and a burden. The awareness of death creates the deepest fear known to the mind, the fear of non-existence. Psychologists call this mortality salience, and it silently shapes almost every belief we hold. Religion offered the first antidote. Long before medicine, before philosophy, before science, humans created a powerful idea: life continues after death. With that single belief, the unbearable became bearable. Suddenly, death wasn't a wall, it was a door to something greater, better, eternal. This transformed religion into something more than meaning. It became hope, and hope is irresistible. But hope alone isn't enough. To motivate behavior, hope needs structure. That structure came through afterlife economics, a psychological exchange. Be good now and you will be rewarded later. Break the rules now and you will be punished later. Heaven and hell, paradise and suffering, karma and rebirth. Different symbols, same psychology. This system works because it transforms invisible ideas into moral consequences. The mind is constantly negotiating. If I do this, what will happen to me? Even if the answer is invisible, the brain feels it is real. Fear and hope become two currencies that shape life. Fear of punishment creates obedience. Hope for reward creates devotion. Together, they guide behavior more powerfully than any physical authority ever could. You can escape a king, you can run from a chief, but you cannot escape judgment after death, because it lives in your mind. This created a psychological loop. When something bad happens, the mind searches for meaning. Was I punished? Did I upset something sacred? Is this a test? When something good happens, the mind rewards belief. I was blessed. My prayers worked. I am protected. Fear and hope blend into moral accounting, a personal ledger between the individual and the invisible world. This is why many people would die for their beliefs, not because they want death, but because they believe death is not the end. A soldier who believes in paradise doesn't fear the battlefield. A martyr who believes in eternal life doesn't fear sacrifice. The afterlife becomes the greatest negotiation ever invented, the promise of infinity. And yet, this promise has a cost. If one group believes it has the only path to eternity, then every other path becomes a threat, not just to identity, but to destiny. So religion didn't just shape how we live, it shaped how we die. It turned the unknown into a story we can carry with us, a story that makes the final moment feel like a beginning. When a belief promises eternity, the person who controls that belief holds something more valuable than land, gold, or armies. They control destiny. How did faith become the biggest power structure in human history? Religion began as meaning. It evolved into community, but eventually it became something much greater. Influence. Influence over behavior. Influence over fear. Influence over hope. Influence over identity. And influence, when organized, becomes power. Once a belief system had rules for living, people needed someone to interpret those rules, someone to translate the invisible world into daily instructions. What is sacred? What is sinful? Who speaks for the divine? The answer became religious authority: priests, prophets, monks, imams, shamans, gurus. Different names, same psychology. They weren't just leaders. They were mediators between two worlds, the human and the divine. And that role created a unique form of power, power without physical force. If a king punishes you, you can resist him. If a god punishes you, resistance feels impossible. This gave religious leaders something no other authority possessed: moral influence. They shaped how entire civilizations understood right and wrong. They decided what was pure and what was forbidden. They controlled rituals, knowledge, sacred places, and spiritual identity. People didn't just follow them, they trusted them with their souls. As civilizations expanded, religion connected cities, tribes, and nations under a shared story. A shared story creates loyalty. Loyalty creates cooperation. Cooperation creates strength. This is why empires used religion as the foundation of their power. Armies conquer land. Beliefs conquer identity. A ruler who controls faith controls the imaginary world, the world inside minds. And the imaginary world has always been more powerful than the physical one. People will sacrifice their lives for a flag, a book, a holy word, or an idea they cannot touch. This is the economy of belief. Faith turns invisible promises into visible obedience. Over time, religion gained resources: land donated to temples, wealth given as offerings, labor given as devotion. Entire cities formed around sacred places. Pilgrimages created trade. Holy calendars shaped the economy. What began as myth became infrastructure. Religion became a brand before brands existed, a symbol that tells you who you are, your values, your destiny, your community, your enemies. But here's the psychological twist. The stronger religion became in culture, the deeper it embedded itself into personal identity. Faith wasn't just a belief, it was heritage, it was family. It was the story that explained your existence, long before you could even think for yourself. If the story is inherited, it feels natural. If it feels natural, it feels true. And when billions of people grow up inside different inherited truths, each one becomes the ultimate reality for that group. That's how religions, once myth and metaphor, became political forces, shaping laws, wars, ethics, and national identities. We live in an age of science, technology, and answers. We've mapped the brain, split the atom, and walked on the moon. So why do humans still believe in the invisible? Why are billions still searching for meaning beyond what they can touch? Modern society often claims it has outgrown religion. We imagine ancient tribes praying to the sky, while we hold a universe of knowledge inside a smartphone. But knowledge alone doesn't erase the psychological instincts that created religion in the first place. Because religion was never just about gods, it was about meaning. And meaning is still the most valuable currency in the human mind. Science can describe how we exist, but not why. It can explain the mechanics of consciousness, but not its purpose. It can measure the brain, but not the soul we feel living inside it. That gap between information and meaning is where new belief systems are being born. Look around the modern world. Politics can look like religion. People aren't just supporting ideas, they're defending identities. They divide into tribes, follow leaders like prophets, protect ideologies like sacred texts, and exile anyone who questions the dogma. Celebrities and influencers become saints of a different kind, followed with devotion, defended with passion, worshipped through screens. Their words shape trends, values, dreams. Their lives become stories people build meaning around. Even conspiracy theories operate like modern myths, explaining chaos with a hidden truth, revealing a chosen group who knows, defining good and evil forces fighting behind the scenes. And in the age of self-help, new spiritual movements rise every year, promising healing, destiny, manifestation, higher vibrations. New language replaces old symbols, but the psychology is familiar. A path to salvation, a method of purity, a group of believers, a cosmic law. Humans are not abandoning religion, they are reinventing it, because the instinct that created the first God still lives in the brain. The fear of death, the hunger for meaning, the need to belong, the desire to matter. These instincts are older than any scripture, older than language itself. So when one myth fades, another emerges. When one story is questioned, a new one rises to answer the same questions humanity has always asked. Who am I? Why am I here? What happens when I die? What is good? Who should I follow? Who should I trust? Religion is not a scam invented by a few to control the many. It is a mirror reflecting the human mind. We created gods to understand the world, and then we bowed to our own creation. The real question isn't whether religion will end. The question is, what story will we believe next? Because as long as humans feel the weight of existence, we will build stories strong enough to carry it. And maybe humanity's greatest illusion is thinking we are rational creatures. We are emotional creatures searching for logic that fits our feelings, searching for meaning that protects our fears, searching for a story where we are the hero. In the end, religion didn't scam the world. The world needed the scam, not as deception, but as comfort. And we are still writing new myths today, with new symbols, new prophets, and new promises of salvation. The gods change. The psychology stays the same.